Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Automating the Trades. This is the second episode in our series where we at the Graphite Lab are going to go through some problems that some of our customers, as well as just some other trades businesses have run into and walk through how to solve them live with you. We are here with Jacob Nolly, who is our CEO and founder, and I'll be running through a list of some of the problems that we've run into and how we think would be the best way to solve them. I'll just start going down the list if that sounds good to you, Jacob.
Awesome. Yeah, excited to hop in.
Perfect. Person said, I'm having trouble managing short calls. I need a way to automatically excuse any inbound or outbound calls that last under 30 seconds. And for calls under 10 seconds, they should be classified as drop with that reason logged. It's becoming difficult to handle this manually and keep things organized.
Perfect. Yeah, so this is a very common problem inside of home service businesses, especially when you start using a bunch of tracking numbers inside of ServiceTitan to track campaigns. One of the problems is you might get a ton of calls and a lot of them being dropped, especially nowadays. Everybody's used to getting those spam calls. So it can be effective to basically flag when certain things, when a basically auto classify calls, because especially in ServiceTitan with call being such a fundamental piece of the reporting on your CSRs, it's very important that you're getting out the junk when you can. It's one of the things that we basically can do inside of our custom ServiceTitan Zapier app is we can actually query calls. So let's just pull that up here. So you can query phone calls, as you can see here, and then basically you can pull in the call. Again, one of the things that we will do is we'll do created after, created before. Now, this is one of the things that's really important with calls. Calls are unlike other things. And this is one of those concepts about when should a thing run? And when should a thing run is a very important thing to consider whenever you're building a trigger step, because you need to think about what's happening. One of the major problems with that is that it is going to pull in calls that are currently happening. So when a call lands in Zapier in a trigger, it will never run on that call again because of the ID value. So for instance, if you pull in a call that is currently happening, it won't trigger on that again. The duration we care about, it's the longest duration we want this Zap to trigger on is 30 seconds. That being said, if we pull every 1 minute, if a call had just happened and was currently happening, anything that's happened in the last 30 seconds will automatically trigger our workflow because the call's still happening. And so what we want to do is we want to delay for the total duration. And so that's what this created after and created before is. So basically we only want to trigger this if the call had been happening for the maximum duration that we actually care about. So in this situation, 30 seconds, we care about that. 10 seconds is the other one. We don't want to trigger on anything below 30 seconds. So what we're basically going to do is do created after minus, so anything created after 30 minutes ago. So basically, as time progresses, as the call happens, we'll approach that. The before is where it really matters. Because if we say now, it's anything between now and 30 minutes ago was created. So every time it triggers, basically anything that's happening right now will run. Created after should always be longer than the polling window. Our polling window in this account's 1 minute. If you have a very basic Zapier account, it might be 15 minutes. I usually recommend twice as long as your polling window into the past. Created before, though, should be, again, it should offset us by at least as long as our max duration, which is 30 second situation. So we want to do now minus 1 minute just to be safe. And so basically this is only going to trigger if a call was created at least a minute ago, it will trigger. So if I'm on the phone and it's been a minute, this won't fire. So calls that go into this will be either done or at least a minute long, which will mean that they'll get filtered out. So then our filter conditions, as we pull in that event, basically we're going to filter on duration. So what I always recommend here, because one of the things that we're going to be leveraging this workflow is a path, because there's two workflows we want to do. I always recommend still using a filter before a path. And one of the major reasons for that is when you're looking back at your Zapier history, it's really easy to look for filtered steps. But if you don't have a filter step and you're just doing paths and one of them doesn't run, you'll never actually know if it ran or not, which is a big problem because when you're trying to filter through whether or not your zaps are running, if it's filtering every single time, it'll always show as successful. So having this filter step to check for both of your conditions is an important thing. The condition here, since both the durations that we care about are 10 seconds and 30 seconds, basically what we'll do is duration is less than 30 seconds and call status is not in progress because we want the call to be completed. So those are the two filters I would add here. The next thing that we would do is we would go in and add a path step. Basically, the path steps are really cool. They're not available in every Zapier plan, but I would definitely recommend if you have your own Zapier account or if you're leveraging one of our Graphite Lab managed accounts, they all have paths. But if you're leveraging your own, I'd recommend having a plan that at least can do paths, because what we can do here is we have two different actions we want to do. One if the call is under 30 seconds, but over 10 seconds, and one if it's only under 10 seconds. So the first path that we can do is under 30 seconds. Now, one of the things that's important to remember is, like I said, above 10 seconds, because what's basically being asked here is if it's under 30 seconds in duration, classify it as excused. If it's under 10 seconds, classify it as a dropped, which is very different. And so if we have under 30 seconds as our path here, it'll also fire under the 10-second one. It'll also fire for the 10-second calls too. That's greater than or equals to. So it'll be greater than 10 seconds and it'll be less than 30 seconds duration to go down this path. And then for this path, it'll just be less than or equal to 10 seconds, if that makes sense. So that it will help go down the right path. Any path meeting the conditions will run in Zapier. So if you have 5 paths and all of them meet the conditions, they will all run on that set of information. There's no order to them, so they'll run asynchronously, which means all of the paths that are possible to trigger will trigger at the same time. So it's really important if you have mutually exclusive paths that you make them mutually exclusive in the filters. But basically for the first path, what we would do is we would use our ServiceTitan Zapier app again. And we would do call. So we'll update call. And basically what you'll do is you'll pass in the call ID from the first step, but then basically what you can do is do a call type. So in this situation, we'll do excused. And then you can also put in that excuse memo. So you can be auto classify the call under 30 seconds. You can also do a reason. So that's another thing that you can do. So if you want to put in the notes there, and you can also associate it to a different agent. So maybe you have an agent set up, an employee set up in your account. That's like for dropped calls or whatever. Some people do that. You can associate that there. Another thing that we do recommend that you do is also make the lead false, because in that situation, for the vast majority of these, it's not a lead in ServiceTitan, which by definition is this customer is likely to convert to something. Exactly same step here. So what we can do is just duplicate that across and make it the net new, the dropped call type, rather than having it excused, which basically lets us be able to have both workflows and have them run separately. It's a little complex, so it's important to think through all of the different aspects of Zapier and how those things play together to make sure that the results that you're looking for actually happen. If you want the results you're looking for, you need to really consider, what are we pulling in and when are we pulling it in? Because that really matters. How are we filtering it? Are we going to do error handling later if this isn't working the way that we would want? And then how are we facilitating our path steps so that we're not running multiple workflows on the same information that maybe we don't want to be. A lot of complexity here, and that's why it's really important to think through those things.
Yeah, that's great. Those are really helpful considerations to be thinking about. Great. So the next problem is a ServiceTitan specific problem. Thank you everyone for joining episode 2 of Automating the Trades. If you are interested in implementing any of these apps in your business or anything similar, getting eyes on your technology, on your automations, be sure to reach out in the link in our description. We'd be happy to chat with you.